Are we good, John?
Thanks. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's Farmington School Board meeting. It's September 9th. Would you all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we have everybody from the board in attendance tonight. Joel is in person, Josh is online, and so is Stan, and Tim is with us also. Next thing we have is public participation. Anybody from home or in the audience that'd like to get up and speak, feel free.
Just have a question on that.
Go ahead.
Heard a lot of comments, and when I actually remoted in, it's very difficult sometimes to access the meeting. With the new phone system, do we have the capability of putting a hard phone next to one of the microphones and give people an actual 755 number to dial into?
I can try it. We've got it here, but let me...
Not tonight.
Okay.
In the future, because I've heard a
We'll see
lot
if
of
we can
public
move
comment
forward.
about how hard it is to access our meetings, and that's the whole purpose of having a remote access. And
Certainly.
I can tell you the night I remoted in, it drove me nuts. I actually had to have my computer. Every time I went to audio on my computer, it would boot me out. I had to call in on the phone.
Yeah.
So it can be cumbersome.
Yeah. What did I say?
October.
I'll get it right.
Yeah, it's coming in real quiet on your end.
Okay, so we need to yell. I'm going to move the computer a little bit closer. There you go.
And on Tim's note, I know we had talked about before, you talked about maybe having a boom microphone that would put the sound out better. I don't know, it's something you had said.
We'll have to see if we can get that going.
Because there's another comment of the sound quality for people who are trying to watch the meeting.
Is there Bluetooth on that computer?
I don't believe so. Although Jen's better to answer that than I am.
If there's not, can you see if within district we have a Bluetooth USB? Because we may be able to take the Bluetooth speaker that we used on the call-in phones, put it on our table, and they're going to be able to hear us better.
Try that.
Right. So, any thoughts on the meeting minutes of August 17th?
Make a motion. Make a motion that we approve the minutes of August 17th, 2020 public session, non-public 1, non-public 2, non-public 3, non-public 4, non-public 5, and non-public 6.
Second.
Any discussion or issues with putting them all together from the board? Any discussion? Not hearing any discussion. All those in favor
Aye.
to accept as written?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Next on our agenda, we have reports, first being financial.
You see you have all three reports in the financial folder. Didn't know if you had any questions on them, but I wanted to make note, and I added in today, hopefully you were able to see it, two more forms in there. One of them is from the New Hampshire Retirement System.
Gotta speak up.
One of them is the New Hampshire Retirement System. They have set their
Contribution rates?
for the next fiscal year, and it's an increase of about 21% on our side.
No, the percentage is 21%. The increase is from 17.8.
Which is pretty substantial. So, but I just want to let you know that does not take effect until next fiscal year, so it will be part of our budgeting process. So when we budget for next year, that line will obviously be increased to make up for that. And I also gave you an updated form in there of, as of today, of all your capital reserve funds and the balances of all those, including interest and everything, and all the adjustments made since the last election. So I wanted to make sure that at least you were aware of it, as in case there's any topics that come up in regards to that.
Now, on the trust funds, we have some roof repairs that are being done. those are coming out of these trust funds or no? Two of them, it's coming out of,
No, the roof repair will be coming out of two of those trust funds.
Brian, I didn't get to see that because it came in after I looked on the folder this morning. Is that the spreadsheet that you did on the trust funds, does that reflect, okay. Somewhere in the records, and I can find it if you can't, we had a running Excel spreadsheet that showed what was in the trust funds and what was allocated out of that, but not necessarily spent.
Yes, we can put that back in the folder.
Kind of keep track of it that way, so on the roof
I
projects.
was updating it today, but I didn't have all of
Okay.
that time, so.
Like on the roof projects, what capital, what trust funds, those are coming out, so that just as we're appropriating
Right.
money, we know where we stand, because I think last budget season was actually lines that were over expended, because we already, the board had already spent money out of them.
yeah, I think that would answer my question instead of going through these right now, if we could just have that updated of what's been allocated against these funds that has not yet been expended. I guess that's your
Yeah.
question, yeah.
And speaking of the roof project, I've got a date today of the 23rd. That's when they're planning on starting. So, I guess got the contract.
So that's 2 weeks from today.
Yep.
Good.
Any more on the lobby projects?
They have the POs. We're just trying to hear back. They did get back to me on working second shift.
Yeah.
And they said it was not an option, so I'm pushing back on them right now to see. I think there is an opportunity for them to do that, but they just gave me a quick no, so
Okay.
I'm working on that right now as we speak.
Yeah, I mean,
Just something I'd keep considering a future vote for a company, how much they're willing to bend and work with us as a partnership. It's not
The
all
general
a partnership.
contractor's fine. He goes, we'll work with whoever you can. It's the sub
Okay.
that is working on that
so
particular.
far as with glass people, or,
I think the interior
Okay.
stuff they're doing.
anyone else have any questions regarding the financial reports? Is there anything that you want to point to us, Brian, that is a change or problematic or a concern?
Not right now. We just got our first adequacy payment, so, which is about 1.38 million. That was from the state. So that keeps us, fine. We're not,
We're solvent for another couple
yeah,
of weeks.
we're not spending money more than we're bringing it in, that's for sure. So, but we just did, we have our largest payrolls now because everyone's in, so,
Any word on the federal funding, the CARES Act funding?
on the second round.
Oh, no, what's coming in for payment? Have we received that cash yet, or is it still?
Well,
pending?
We don't get that as a
It's a
chunk.
reimbursement.
It's all reimbursement. So, and we have a public hearing on that for next
Right,
week.
okay.
Yep. I did put into the folder today too, kind of a snapshot of where the CARES Act is now, so that you can see what's allocated, what we have left. Right now, I've got about 28,000, a little more than that is not allocated. However, there are pieces in there that I estimated high when I was putting in early numbers just to get something in to cover. For instance, I had 75,000 in on desk shields. Even if we do another order, we probably won't top 25 total, so I can release 50 of that and rewrite it for something else. And that's a relatively easy process. So
Go ahead, Tim.
While we're on the financials, where do we stand on the plexiglass stands? Was there a shortage? Are we right on? Do we need to order more?
we're going to need to order some more. We had enough as far as numbers of students that are enrolled, but as we started looking at the way students move, if I have 24 in this class and 12 in this class and then they shift, I still need 24 here and potentially 24 here, even though it's 36 kids that are being serviced because of how they go. And they're not necessarily sturdy enough to say, pick up and take with you to the next class.
So how soon do we have to do that appropriation, or does the appropriation we did cover that expense?
What you did covered only what I've already ordered. I've already reached out to them. I can get them delivered the 17th if I can get a PO in tomorrow. The price goes up slightly because I'm not ordering as many at a
Yeah.
chunk. But it will be, it's less than 5,000 and I'm gonna order some additional feet too, because we ran out of feet with what we have.
So you're thinking of ordering how many spares?
I'm looking at ordering 200 spares so that I have teacher desks covered too, and everywhere that a kid goes, I've got something there.
So that'd be approximately another $3,600.
About $3,600, and then with the
And,
feet, it's
Right.
for $2.25. So
So maybe under $4,000, and that will go against be applied for reimbursement of the
yes,
CARES Act.
yeah, it would go under the CARES Act.
So you don't need anything from us to make that happen?
It's under 5,000. I can do that, but
I'm
I-
okay with it.
I
I'm
was
okay with it
asked
as well. I
to
just
bring
wanna
that
make sure
forward
that-
tonight just to make sure.
Yep.
But all told, the expenditures for the desk shields will be less than 25,000 aggregate, including the plexiglass that we had cut, and what have you. And considering that my original numbers were looking at, it was going to be in the
70, yeah.
70,000 range, I'm pleased with where we are.
Anything else? Next on our report, school opening.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I have something for financials. When the legal invoices come in, are they still fairly detailed?
They're relatively detailed, yes.
And they're in a folder at the SAU?
Yes, they're with Patty once they're signed off by admin, yes.
So if I wanted to stop by, I could stop by and look at them?
Sure.
All right,
Sure.
thank you.
While we're on that subject, if you don't mind, I guess it'd be directed to Brian. Brian, for our contracted services like legal, we used to have, I think we brought the psychologist in-house, but we used to do anything non-educational, anything support services as far as contract services. Do we have a running tab somewhere? Is it a 1-year contract, 2-year contract, 3-year contract,
Year to year.
year to year?
I haven't started one. I'm not saying there was one. It's just digging into the
Okay.
files.
I've never seen one, so, one of the things I'd like to do is look at legal, see where our contract's at.
We did an RFP this second year that I was superintendent.
3 years.
It's been 3 years, yes.
Is there anything else similar to legal that we use?
We must have some copier contracts. We might have some.
We have
other-
we have a 5-year copier contract that is part of, and we're in year 2, I think.
I think it's 2.
Yeah, I
Those are the longest standing ones. We have contracts with Constellations for BCBA services, things like, those are educational pieces. We have multi-year contracts on some of our curriculum pieces. We have some that have renewals on online support pieces that go with it. But those are the principal contracts of that sort that we have.
Okay. I'm not necessarily looking for the educational contracts, but supports contracts for the board. Legal is one.
MRI would be another.
MRI would be another.
I mean, we may have some contracts for services for maintenance or repair of a heating system ventilation.
Yeah.
I think we were doing
that would
that.
be.
And we've had some shorter term contracts for some tech support, and the larger project contracts have all come through the board, but if there's a smaller wiring contract, that those are usually just
I
single
think you're mostly
single
referring to
project.
the reoccurring
Looking for the
contracts.
reoccurring support to us. MRI would be one. We spend a significant amount of money with them. I'd like to look at what our legal status is there on a contract. Legal's another. Do we have a day-by-day contract? Is it 3 years? On legal, one of the things the town did is they put a not to exceed on the contract. That may be something that we might want to look at as a board, but I'd like a kind of like a checklist of what is out there for our service contracts, so we can look at it when they're up and decide if anything, what we might want to do differently.
If it makes sense that it's getting close and we should consider, if we were going to win, and if we could consider putting it back out. Because depending on what we have for contract, it may not be up for this year, or it may be,
Right.
like on legal, what is that current budget, annual budget that we have for that line?
About 80,000 a year is what we're spending.
Okay.
I have to go
Typically
back
go
and look
over.
at Bud stat.
Yeah, it's, that's a whole separate question. I don't want to dig too deep into that.
Legal's on a multi-year contract.
No, I don't know.
It's not on a multi-year contract.
Oh.
We put it out to RFP
Yeah.
to go, but it's not a multi-year contract. It's more, that's the company, the firm that we went with, and it's on a
Year to year.
per call, per hour basis. It's not.
But does it automatically renew on an annual basis for a year, or it's just open-ended until it's broken?
I would say open-ended till broken,
Okay.
because it's hourly, so.
So I guess maybe if you could dig into that. I'd like to know, just from knowledge, what would be like the last 3 or 4 years that we've expended on that line.
Sure.
Is this a
That's-
bubble, or is this the number? I mean, I'm familiar with what the towns were on a recurrent basis because I was there for 9 years, but, what is the historical range that
We can pull that.
we've budgeted and expend? Because the budget line item might be one thing, but the expense could be totally different because it may not track with the budget line item. I know in the selectmen's case, a lot of years it didn't because things come up that need to be addressed. Moving along, next on the reports, we had school opening. I don't know what you had prepared into that, or just discussion.
Wanted to just kind of jump in with a, here's where we were
Go ahead.
today. I don't have my principals right now because
Right.
they are all passing out materials for remote students tonight. We opened this morning with a bang. Was it perfect? No. Were there a lot of things that went right? Yes, there were. And probably our most pleasant surprise was the new traffic patterns. That went really, really well. Valley View, Thayer Drive was cleared out by 7:45, which is almost unheard of on a first morning. So those went exceptionally well, and we've had really good support from the Farmington PD helping to direct down on Spring Street. They've been very, very supportive. We had a few hiccups today at Henry Wilson with wireless. We're in the process. We had a fairly large cutover on our plan for what we were doing. Moved some things up with vendors to try to make sure that we had everything in place before school started. One vendor was able to shift things before Labor Day. The other vendor is still waiting to finish part of the cutover process. We had some classrooms that had a tough time. Teachers who were wired in were fine. As multiple students hit the wireless at once, we had some bounce up and down.
In just Henry Wilson?
I believe it was just Henry Wilson, and it wasn't all of Henry Wilson.
So when you're referring to cut over, you're talking about the changing of one system to another?
We're changing our, part of our firewall going into our router system, and we've moved from 100 meg to a 1 gig system, which will make it much better, but the final cutover hasn't completely happened yet, so once that's there, we're gonna be in solid shape. We had some really, really good feedback on a lot of the forms that we've been able to do electronically this year. There's been some very positive feedback there. Folks like it a whole lot better. We had a large number of families at the high school level who didn't get the screening forms filled out this morning, and so that gave us some backup at the door trying to get that part done. I anticipate that tomorrow that should go a little bit better as folks know exactly where to find it, and those who needed paper have paper, and those who were having a tough time realizing where the screeners were now have access to those. So, all in all, we had a lot of cooperation from students, and I'm very, very proud of what they were able to accomplish the first day. Our staff has been amazingly resilient, and I couldn't be more proud of them.
Good. Go ahead, Tim.
Not being critical and realizing it's the first day of school, one of the things I noticed this morning is a group of, just pulling into the facility, a group of 30 kids, very close to each other, no masks out in the parking lot. And one of the things I'd like to see is the educational message put out to the kids that says, hey, look, you're back in school because you want to be back in school.
Yep,
And we
and you're
bent
on
over to
school
make it
grounds.
happen. But if this
Just-
conduct continues, we're going to end up having to shut down.
Yep.
So I'd also like to see or some discussion between your administrative staff of, how do we deal with that? Is it a warning the first time, a week out on remote the second time, and third time you're out of the building, period? With a zero tolerance, other than our special ed kids that we have to deal with and take a different method, I think that's something that we need to be critical for.
Yeah,
Today, in what I saw, may have been just not realizing or not being educated in the process. But when I saw it, it was kind of scary to me.
Absolutely, I would agree.
I'd agree, and I think it needs to be, hopefully, well, I'm sure it'll be well thought out, but I think it needs also to be as consistent as possible
Absolutely.
between the schools, so that that the approach that we take to rectify it is as best we can, because it's it's a tough situation. We're requiring certain things of students, we're requiring certain things of staff, and we're trying to have everybody be in compliance to that to 100%, which is a very
100%
optimistic goal.
compliance is tough to do.
It's a very
It is.
optimistic goal, but the more successful they are, I think the more successful
We'll all be,
we'll all be.
absolutely.
My second comment on the staff and the traffic did an awesome job. I mean, there was zero lag time getting the kids through this morning. One thing I noticed on staff is no traffic vests. Is that common? I saw staff out like at the intersection to get people up to Valley View and here. Typically, insurance regulations require an orange vest if you're going to be out in the roadway, and I don't know whether that's anything the school system has done before.
It hasn't been past practice, but I'm happy to get some vests.
I think it's a good idea as far as, visibility, and you probably want to
Particularly
order
as it
them
gets darker.
extra large, so in wintertime, if there's a winter coat on or something, they're going to fit.
I mean, the other thing is you're going to have low visibility days, foggy days, other days where people, maybe raining, and people's visibility from the vehicles may be different based upon just the difference in vehicles, so.
The other thing it does is it makes a staff member immediately identifiable
Right.
if something happens on the exterior of our buildings.
Right.
Right. Joel, you had something?
Were we understaffed in any particular areas today?
We had a little bit of coverage back and forth where we've had resignation, but other than that, I believe we were in pretty good shape. I'm down a custodian, but as far as teaching staff, not too bad.
Anything else on the reopening? Is there anything, issues that you saw today that you think need to be before the board in the next week or so? Concerns or?
At this point, I think they are things that we can work out. I don't see anything that needs to be board addressed at this time. We've got some hiccups that we're working out as far as, okay, how does a practice work in the gym, and does that go to Henry Wilson? Does it go here? That's we'll work out the schedule. That's not a board thing. It's day one. By next Monday, will I have a better feel if there's something else that I need to let you know? I will. But I think that at this point, we're We're in about as good a shape as we could have been considering where we've come in a couple of weeks.
Tim?
A couple of weeks ago,
If I could just add, it's Diana, my apologies. If I could just add a comment, if that's okay?
Go ahead, Diana. Go ahead, Diana.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. And Mr. Brown, your point is well taken. I noticed today, and I think the administrators would agree, the school setting, I think, is a real surprise to the students in terms of the way things have to look due to the COVID restrictions. They're not sitting next to each other at lunch. They're sitting at school desks up in the cafeteria. They go outside for 20 minutes, a few minutes, then they come in, they eat, they go out, having to space out in the hallway, having to sit behind the partitions in the classroom, these kind of really strict procedures in terms of one person in the bathroom at a time. And when you look at them when they're outside of school, that's not how they're living their lives. So I think it's going to take just a few days for them to kind of make that adjustment. It really was so great to see the kids today, and so great to see the staff with the kids. I think we'll get there. But, good point, well taken.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tim.
I guess my last question, hopefully on this area, is within the last week or so, or a couple of weeks, we talked about computers at the high school. And at one time, students were going to be allowed to bring in their own device, and now they're being told that's not going to happen. Did that change?
What we're looking at is for the majority of them, because we have programs that we're able to push out to give them more access that they can't necessarily access if they have their own device. And because we have the ability to better monitor, if students are bringing devices in here, and there are some that there may be a reason for that to happen, and certainly willing to work with students in that instance. But for the majority, for us to be able to have the oversight of what we need to be able to see what they're doing while they're here, we need them on our devices because I can't put that software on their own devices.
So with that in mind, if in 6 weeks we're completely shut down and fully remote, do we have enough devices to handle that within the other schools?
Do I have it today? I do not. In 6 weeks, I certainly hope to do so. We've got a date of early October, and if that's the case, then we'll be golden.
Okay.
So I know that you had made mention to me that you received in 80 Chromebooks.
We received 80 Chromebooks last week, which puts us in much better shape. We're looking at probably deploying to another grade level, if not by the end of the week, the first of next week. We've had a few other things with other projects up and running to make sure that we get everything out the door in a
So what is the balance that is owed to us on our orders? If we got in 80, what is the balance owed to us?
We still have 350 that are coming in. Those 80 were the ones that we had ordered back in the spring.
So that this new shipment, which was, I think, some tablets and Chromebooks, was 350 total.
Right. That will, full district, we will be completely one-to-one with spares.
And
A number of the machines that we have out right now we've gotten you a machine, but once we have other ones in, we're probably going to be doing some swapping because some that are out are not the most robust.
Now, when is the expected date of a partial or full shipment of that 350?
I have early October at this point. I don't have a more solid date for that.
And was that a full shipment in early October or a partial shipment?
I believe it's full, but I will clarify that. There's a possibility we may have the option of getting a partial shipment in of a different style for about a $20 differential, which you've given me some latitude to do. And we'll see if that comes to fruition. If it does, we'll jump on it. If it doesn't, then we'll stick with what we have. We still have at least another week and a half before we would need to release any of that to go with another option.
Okay. Anything else for the school opening? Questions or concerns from the other members? Moving on next to some updates. Building logistics?
And we've touched on some of these. We will need to be looking at some more of the shields, and we'll do that. I don't know if this is where we want to talk about numbers for custodians, or if we want to save that for personnel later. One of the pieces that Larry and I have talked about, and I'll let him jump in on it,
Might as well, we're already talking about it.
if needing at least another custodian per shift, because with the desk shields, it's going to add a tremendous amount of wash down and time for that. There is another possible solution, however, that he's gotten some information on. Were you able to set anything up for next week? Okay. We have a gentleman who is willing to come in and do a presentation for the board. I'm very curious to see what some of this is. It's a disinfectant system that supposedly lasts for multiple months once done. And if we were able to go to something like that, may cut down significantly on what we would need to be doing for repeated disinfections in between.
So is this a similar product to what some of the airlines are going to start using for cleaning planes, which would basically be a chemical treatment on the surface that would stay in force for a certain period of time?
I believe that's, jump in, Larry.
You can use that.
You still have to yell for the folks at home. Actually, you can yell for this one too. It's closer.
Try.
Okay.
Yes, well, some of you know the gentleman, Mr. Jim Parker. I think you know him. It's a new system that they're using. The way he explained it to me, he showed me a quick video. He said he's willing to come in, talk to the board, show it. And basically, he says any surfaces that we deemed for him to do, we would clean, disinfect for the cure times that are recommended, 10 minutes, whatever. Then he comes in and it's basically an electrostatic sprayer type thing, same we have, but it's a different chemical that adheres to it. And he told me that it's a guaranteed 90-day coverage, that you do not have to disinfect anything for 90 days afterwards. He comes in and tests. He says he tests before, we'll test once after, and then within 90 days, 60 days if we want to, he comes back and he can test to prove that it's still working. So
Is it COVID related or any?
it's COVID related. It's green, it's EPA and FDA regulated, he claims. It's safe for food surfaces. So basically,
But would this be something that would also benefit us once the flu comes through?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, because he actually told me that he's dealing with some places that they want it done more for the flu than for COVID.
Could you maybe get some information to Ruth Allen about this, whether the manufacturer of this, so we can maybe be prepared? Or
Yeah, I can,
We'll put some stuff in the
look it
board.
up.
I know that it's a YouTube video that's out with the material. I can't remember the specific name right now. I'll contact him again, but he said he'd be willing to come in next Monday if we wanted and do a quick presentation.
Go ahead, Tim.
So something like that would be covered under our current emergency funding that we have with the state.
Yes, it would.
As we talk personnel, if we have to hire additional janitors that may not come under that line, or that line may be expended, kind of like recommendations of where it's going to come from the bottom line of the budget, so we don't find ourselves in this part of the year overspending, and then the end of the year saying,
Oops.
hey, we got to find this
Right.
money, we spent too much.
It could fall under the FEMA monies, which would be a 75% reimbursement.
Then we still have to
We
find
still
that
have to find
25%.
Yes.
Kind of keep that balancing act as we're moving forward.
Absolutely.
Then if there is a second wave of federal funding, at least we kind of have an idea of where we're going to invest those dollars for our biggest bang. So I'm not against hiring.
Right.
It's just that balancing act of where are we going to,
Well-
steal from Peter to pay Paul.
Well, the other piece, too, is that the governor keeps reiterating that there's money. And so, he said, but nobody's allocated everything they have. Well, we're getting closer. And I am happy to jump in and say, okay, right here, folks, you can send us some more.
I think,
I don't know that it's that easy. He keeps claiming that it is.
I think my guess is where you're going to see that going is the unemployment trust fund to knock down that business
But he
tax.
keeps
that's
saying
just-
that it's there for schools. So I'm not opposed to
They've already
taking him up
increased
on
the
it.
unemployment rates to businesses by, I think, 500 or 600%. So they're already trying to level that fund.
Well,
on,
just on the front of
employees.
hiring too, we have, there's a facilities conference call with the state every Friday that's been going on, and a lot of the comments from throughout the state are, they've contacted services who say they don't have people available who want to do the jobs.
Yeah.
And there's, if you look online on job ads, there's a lot of districts that have been trying to get custodial staff for months that have been unable to get them too, so.
Did you get a chance, Larry, to look at the gym this morning? Was there anything noticeable on how it was cleaned after the elections? Were you satisfied with the work that was done?
Yes.
Okay.
And I came in right after they had cleaned every surface that in going through to close up, everything was completely done and noticeably done. Even the door handles were still damp as I went back out again. They had hit everything.
Now, I guess getting back to this potential product, would that resolve some concerns regarding the gym as far as?
I would,
events?
if it's a product that he says that they will guarantee that it lasts and it doesn't have to be re-disinfected for 60 days, that it keeps killing
Yeah.
anything for up to 90 days, then yeah,
Yeah,
I would say
definitely.
so.
And it would reduce an awful lot of the time on the desk shields, those sorts of things, because if we're able to disinfect and have those stay, not that general cleaning doesn't happen, but you're not trying to handle 1,100 desk shields a night to get those cleaned, which is a huge time saver.
Which would also cut back on the cost of the disinfectant that we're
Disinfectant
Yes.
using.
labor.
Yeah.
But even if, say, this is a viable solution, it seems like we still may have additional need
Yeah.
for help, whether
Yeah.
it's hiring, whether it's temp agency, or it's a contract cleaning service.
We need to at least get back to full staffing, which we're not there yet.
So do we have quotes in hand from contract cleaners?
The contract cleaners, I have one that has said they will get back to me. They said that on Friday. I don't have it yet. And the other ones that we've contacted have said, I don't have anybody to send you. So, other than doing a place like the one that came in
Servco or
last night
Service
to
Master
do,
or- but
Right.
which is not going to be
Right.
feasible financially in the long run.
Is there anything available on a temp agency?
that's what
We've contacted temp agencies as well.
Okay.
like I said, there's been a couple that, in different districts that have talked about that they've contacted a temp agency with an RFQ for 3 months ago and were told, no, we don't have anybody that's willing to come in or available.
Well, I'll tell you what I did today. I put a hiring bonus on the employment opportunities in my business.
Well, just on the bright side, I did have an application come through for a position today, so.
Yeah. I mean, I think we may need to, I mean, I'm not opposed taking that approach. If this is a staffing thing that we need to get better visibility or basically potential candidates. I mean, our salaries are kind of fixed, in a range. But I don't know, I'm not opposed to doing it, basically a hiring bonus on a janitor to basically get some people in here.
I guess my other question would be, and it's a union body, do we have the ability under the contract to hire temporary workers without any benefits, but to take the benefits that we would normally pay an employee and add that to up the hourly wage as a temporary position? And I don't know without looking at the contract, but that's something, so generally, I think we started the last person at just under $14 an hour. So if our medical benefit for a single person
Right.
increases that amount of money we're going to invest in a full-time person, can we hire temp, but take that big pool of money that we would normally invest in it without benefits to get?
So basically, you have a full-time position might be with benefits, it might be $18 an hour.
I mean,
total
those-
compensation.
That position, those lines would then be essentially transferred to contracted service to pay it out of there. The contract doesn't speak to it directly.
Yep.
I think the concern that I've heard from the union is, if you're looking to bring somebody in to help us because we're short-staffed, there's not opposition to that. If we're looking to bring somebody in at a higher rate to undercut them, that obviously isn't going to be looked upon excitedly.
What I'd be looking at is, and my understanding is you guys have been looking for a little while to hire somebody in a custodian position. So I'm not necessarily looking at a contracted position. I'm looking at, let's hire a temporary employee on the SAU payroll. But take that pool of money that we normally invest in a full-time laborer
And increase the rate.
and increase the rate without benefits. Because they're not getting the benefit, they're getting a higher rate.
And still keep looking for the full-time person. And I'm not opposed, like I said, of doing some incentivizing to get that full-time person, whether it's additional funds for advertisement, additional funds for basically hiring bonus. It's a challenging time. Like I said today, I'm like, let's get that ad up and let's put in a hiring bonus based upon skill level of $500 to $1,000. Just because we're not getting applicants. Because everybody's fighting over the same few fish in the pond.
When your hiring pool becomes a puddle, it's tough.
And the issue is, I mean, we can't just go changing our rates. Say, okay, now we're gonna just say, go from this pay scale to we're gonna change it by $5 an hour. That's not gonna work. But I think in the short term, we can maybe try to get, we gotta address it. If we can't get any temp agencies or willingness, we need to, as Tim says, pay more for temporary labor that doesn't break our budget by using the funds that would go to benefits package that's not being utilized because they're temporary, to offer to do that, or get a contract firm. I mean, because right now, if you're one short, and you're saying we may need one more per shift, that's two more, so we need three more?
Well, per shift, that would be one to fill out, and then if we're looking one more per shift for 3 schools, that's 7 total, which is a lot. It's a
And
lot.
how much of this is we're gonna be able to go back to the CARES Act or FEMA?
You know,
Additional work.
I'll have probably 78,000 or so in FEMA. I mean, in the CARES Act, that would be 100% reimbursable. FEMA's 75% reimbursable. They haven't given us a dollar amount that here's all you can ask for, but only 75% of that is reimbursable. And the impression is that the pool isn't as deep as the CARES Act was, but they haven't necessarily given us a cap there. It's put it in, apply, and we'll let you know.
And then, I guess the other question I had was, I know at the last meeting, Larry, you spoke about that you were gonna get some estimates of how much disinfectant you were gonna be using. I don't know if you'll be able to do that yet, give a projection.
Not a solid projection yet, because this will be one of the first runs on what we're actually using. And I've just found out that they recommend that we do not dilute it at night when we're doing rooms. That's the other issue because it works it's more effective without being diluted. But you can't use it.
You can't.
You don't want to use it
during
full
the
strength during the day when somebody's there. So we're getting some a new dilution system in tomorrow that he's going to hook up for the vital oxide that we can fill spray bottles out of with a 1-to-9 dilution.
Yeah.
That is safe around food products and stuff at that dilution. So we'll be able to use that for cafeteria tables and stuff.
So,
So when do you think you'd have those estimates on your chemical usage? Is this something
By
that,
Monday.
so if we
Monday
have,
we'll have at least 3 days worth of shifts.
so if we have
Okay.
those numbers, and then if we have maybe at least I don't know if we need a proposal by this gentleman, but if we have numbers at what this service would cost,
We'll give you what we can get for information into the packet.
because
and
really
then-
one's going to add to one's going to take
Yep.
away from the other.
Are you
Right,
looking
it-
at having him still come in on Monday? Or would you rather just see it in writing?
I'd rather see the literature and the scientific background in it than listen to a sales presentation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd rather spend a couple hours at home reading.
And then figuring out the questions, and then at the next meeting, we can discuss it. If we have the information before, people can be prepared, so it seems reasonable. We need to know who makes it, the other information, and what the costs are, and what it's the expected cost that we would be incurred by, not by, if he was gonna provide this service, how much would it be? Is it by the hours, by the room, it's by the school?
My understanding was, because I asked him what the cost would be, and he said it would have to depend on how much of an area, he said, first of all, we would go through and mark every area that we wanted done. And then he would,
Mark and measure
Yeah.
and then give us a quote.
The other thing I'd be looking for is, references in the local area of who's using the company.
I would try to get from him some rough orders of magnitude, saying, okay, I did this for this person, and this is what it cost.
Yep.
I did these rooms, and they wanted shields and desks and doors or whatever, and this is what it cost. And then we can extrapolate from those estimates or previous jobs that he did, what we'd be looking at. We could just say, okay, this is what he did here, and we're looking at 10 times that, or 100 times that, or...
And I don't know how many schools are using this yet, so we may be
Either-
fairly
yeah.
early on the
Right.
the
according to
option
him,
list.
this is the first school he's approached.
Right. But he's been providing this service for
It's
others,
been,
so we can...
they've been doing it in Massachusetts. He said he went to classes, training and all this. He's the local person now.
Is he still working for Future Supply, or is this? a
No,
different
he's still he's got his own buildings and grounds.
company?
So, but he says he's been doing ski areas and Mount Washington Hotel. He's gonna be doing that or something. And so,
Larry, is there any way that you can make a phone call to the maintenance department at Frisbee and find out what they're doing? Because they've got a constant turnover of rooms that they're decontaminating. What are they using? What are their protocols?
all right.
Maybe they're using a similar product, maybe it's not.
I know a lot of the other schools are using what we're using, so vital oxide, but
So anything else on that, Larry?
Nope.
Billing logistics?
Do we need to make a motion to allow the superintendent to hire a temporary custodian using the calculation of the benefits and the wages as a temporary 90-day with maybe a $1,000 sign-on bonus payable at the end of 90 days? I mean, do we put it out the door now and get it taken care of, then bring it back up next week and talk about it again? I'd like feedback from...
What do you think, Ruth Ellen?
I'm willing to try it.
I mean, we've got the line in the budget, so I'll make the motion that we hire temporary custodian for 90 days with a starting wage calculated by the business administrator, which includes the normal hourly wage
Plus benefits.
plus any benefits into a cash calculation with a $1,000 sign-on bonus paid at the conclusion of one 90-day period.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Seconded by Josh. Discussion.
one question.
What?
If I have an applicant for the full-time position right now, do you want me to hold back on this offer?
No, if we have an
I mean,
applicant.
he's,
I think, so here's the discussion on the motion. If we do this and we hire a temp person, and we still gotta hire a full-time
Well,
person.
this will be for the full-time position.
Right. But even so, you're saying you need additional help.
Right.
So we need, where are we gonna get the funds? So say we fill that full-time position.
For 90 days, I'd calculate that out of the COVID fund right now.
Well, and
Unless-
frankly,
unless we-
I've had the position open since July, so there is some funding there already.
Okay.
His motion was for temp.
Temp.
I would do
So
90
this
day
would,
temp.
this
Yeah.
wouldn't interfere with your full-time applicant.
No, I know, I'm just saying, if the full-time applicant
Once the bonus comes from
wants to
temp.
say, oh, there's a signing bonus if I come in as a temp, I would rather have a full-time,
Right.
so.
But you see what he's saying? So then the applicant may say, well, I'm gonna take this temp position, it's gonna pay more, and I'm gonna get a signing bonus, and then I'll consider going full-time.
We
mean-
have,
Well,
we have a meeting in essentially 3 more business days.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the other thing is they can consider it and give us a proposal, what they think makes sense as far as a wage, a hiring bonus, and potentially have this full-time person flushed out, whether they're gonna,
Yeah, he's coming in for an interview tomorrow, so.
I mean, we can handle this next Monday. Today's Wednesday.
Yeah, I can withdraw my motion and we can.
Well, you
put-
can make
put
a
it-
motion to post it next, no, because we'll be meeting, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, I would put it on the agenda, or request that it be added as an agenda item at the next meeting. But I
Right.
think, we've talked about this a couple times. I
Right.
think it's time to,
We have to,
Personally, I think it's grievable.
it could be.
I think maybe a conversation with whoever your custodial president, union president is now, or with Terry, just to see if, I mean, maybe not, but,
yeah, I'm okay,
Boy.
I'm okay with that as
you know,
well,
check
but-
that.
Yeah, I'm, yeah.
Because
I'm
we
okay
don't,
with having a discussion, but I'm gonna make a decision where I feel is grievable, not what they feel is grievable.
well, but I can't wait for you to meet Terry. I just think if they believe it's grievable and they're, what is her title? She's like,
She's a lawyer, but she's the AFT
She's the
AFT rep.
negotiating
rep.
representative.
you know, sometimes before you do something like this, it's just worth a, hey,
Yeah.
do you, you know, just, it's just.
Yeah, I don't have a problem
you
having
know,
a discussion, but
You know.
to me, it falls under management right. We have to get the job done. And if we can't hire full-time staff, which would put a member in this union, and we have to do contract, and we're still trying to fill that position, we've done everything we can do. We can't not get the job done. The job has to get done. I mean, we've been trying to hire this position, you know, and I'm not opposed to doing a hiring bonus for a full-time position either. I mean, it's kind of something you guys got to roll around and come back at us, because we're one minimum short, and based upon the short term, we could need 2 to 3 additional ones.
Problem we're gonna run into with a full-time bonus is I think you're gonna run into some contractual issues there versus a temporary position.
Depending on the contract, because a lot of the contracts, they're not union members till after they meet the probationary period. So those requirements prior to them being a member do not apply, usually. I'd have to go through the contract. But we ran into this in
It's
some
in
of
your
our...
folder from last week.
We ran into this in some of the town contracts, whether we had requirements for hiring, was whatever it was, until they meet their permanent status, they may not be considered, they're not in the union yet. So I don't know how this.
There's no requirement to join the union.
There's no
here.
requirement. It does talk about probationary status, but it doesn't say that union membership is contingent
other
upon
thing- the other
having
thing-
achieved full
The other
status.
thing, Larry, and I missed her last meeting, I didn't know who she was, but you've got a union president in your local.
Yeah.
Does it make sense to invite her next Monday night's meeting so that if she has any concerns, she can speak up and pipe up, and if we've got to do a sidebar,
Yep.
you know, they feel more comfortable with a sidebar, that's what we'll do, but we need to get it done.
Who is the president?
Nancy
Nancy
Lapine.
Lapine.
Okay, anything else on this topic? Thanks, Larry. Moving on to sports.
We're in the process of working through getting things rolling. Eric has been working on those sports schedules. I don't have finalized yet. I know that he's been, because we were somewhat later to make the
Right.
decision, a number of schools had all but finalized their schedules, so they're doing some shifting to make sure that.
Is that going to be
there's-
done by next meeting?
I
Monday?
assume that it will be. I've been in contact with Newt. I need to get them a little bit more information on football so that we can make sure that that rolls. They would need their protocols for our screening. And we're looking to see what we're going to do as far as volleyball, if some of the practices may run at Henry Wilson so that we're not moving floor coverings every day for volleyball practice and then putting things back for lunches in the morning. That gym is being used for a number of different things, different from what it's typically used. So we're trying to figure out what's the best bang for where we are without ending up with a lot of additional man hours to make it happen.
Okay. Moving on to food service.
Food service, we had a fairly light day today as far as participation. I do remind families that if you have not filled out free and reduced forms, please do so. But all students at this time, regardless of status, are eligible for free meals until December 31st or until the federal government tells us otherwise, that the waivers have stopped. That hasn't happened yet, but I do strongly suggest that if you feel you may qualify for free or reduced meals, please fill that form out. Under normal circumstances, last year's certification ends September 30. On October 1, everything reverts to full paid. We have some assurances that that will continue through the fall into December, but if we have a big hurricane season, that could change too, because the monies have to go in several different directions. So please get those forms filled out. We do have remote meals also available. We had very few participate in pickup today. I'm working with the food service director to kind of look to see what we need to shift, what still works. He wanted to completely revamp breakfast. I said, we've only had one day, give us a couple days to figure out our morning protocols, and then we'll see what breakfast might look like at Henry Wilson and the high school if we need to change things. But we need to have a couple of days to figure out what normal is before we change to something else.
Went on the SAU website today, under the food services, to kind of look at the menu options and how it was laid out. I can tell you on cell phones, both on Android and iPhone, the webpage doesn't work. Can we get
Oh, yeah.
that fixed? You only see the first option of your choice and you can't move the page.
Okay. So it's the first page of the menu section, or just
When you go in to
food
select
service in general?
what is available for that particular day for a menu.
Okay.
So, like,
So
you
it's
click-
the Nutri-Slice part that we click over to that
Right.
isn't working. Okay.
it's
So that
open-
may be called a Nutri-Slice. I'll find out.
But I think it's opening in our frame on our website, and it's, and our frame's not allowing us to control
Okay.
the menu.
Next on our list was transportation.
Why don't you grab a mic? Lynn enjoys speaking in the mic.
No, I do not.
Well, you came down all this way to talk to us.
I did. Well, because I have a bus that's sitting at DePrezio's that needs $6,000 worth of work.
Okay, what's wrong with it?
It needs a gas tank. It needs a radiator. It's 10 years old.
Yeah.
It has 173,000 miles on it. And I don't know what you guys want to do. If you want to put the $6,000 into it, or
Well, if it's a 10-year-old bus, what's typically been the lifespan of buses that we have kept? We've kept them for 15, 12.
13 is about.
Average.
So, and it's,
We've had a few go longer, we've had a few go shorter.
yeah, so.
I have one that's 13 years old now and passed DOT inspection with flying
Yeah,
colors.
so this bus, so he says it's got $6,000 repair, but it sounds like to me it's more than a gas tank and a radiator.
Well,
Well, all the lines and that's all he told me.
Okay,
He just said around $6,000. It could be a little bit less.
right. What is our annual repair and maintenance line for buses?
Each bus has a separate line.
Yeah,
This one's budgeted for $5,000 based on its age and what we've done in the past. So
Past.
this is going to exceed the repair line for this individual vehicle. I mean, certainly we can shift, but it's more
So
than is typical.
Why have you, I guess, taken that approach where you've allocated repair costs to individuals instead of a pool? I'm just curious.
Primarily to track which buses are costing
Okay.
us, because as we start to see a bus's repairs start to climb up, it's
Right.
easier to cull it out of a single line to say, okay, this bus is starting to cost us more than we're getting out of it. So
So-
it helps us with the rotation.
So on this bus, I don't know how familiar you are with it as far as the rest of the condition of the bus. Is this, everything else is in reasonable functioning order as far as the body's not rotted, the tires are reasonable? Is this, we're putting $6,000 in something that's gonna cost us another 10 next year? Or this bus is, say, in average condition for its fleet, or it's below average, or it's above average? I mean, are we putting good money after bad? I mean, $6,000 is $6,000, and what's the cost of a new bus?
like
Yeah,
77.
between 75 and 80.
So, I mean, we'd like to say they cost us zero, but $6,000 repair for a $70,000 bus that
Right.
it happens. So I'm not hung up about the 6,000, I just want to make sure that we're not putting it into something that we're going to get here next year and you're going to tell us it's got all these other issues and we should have got rid of it last year.
Well, and that's kind of why we're bringing it for the discussion. There are a couple of other issues that.
Yeah, the roof is leaked, but I guess it's leaked for a long time before I took over. And I went in it the other day and there's black on it, but I'm not sure if it's mold or not.
Well, that may need to be something, if it's gone up there, so they need to check and seal the roof, because it's not, typically, it's not a rust hole, it's sealed, it's not sealed.
Right.
My guess, I'm not a bus expert yet.
Well, actually, a lot of buses leak. They leak in the windshield.
Right. And I assume this is an international?
It is.
Yeah, it's at DePrezio's.
Where is it within the fleet? Is it a spare or is it a primary bus?
It is a spare.
It is a spare.
And right now, we don't have a spare driver.
Right. We don't even have a driver.
So how many, do we have another spare if this one goes out?
Yes,
of
I have
rotation?
7 that's 13 years
Okay.
old.
Okay.
Say it again?
Number
have-
7.
Number 7, which is 13 years old.
There's another spare.
Yeah, but I just would have somebody use it in town, not, like up on Meterborough Road or.
And,
The spare bus isn't the one that takes long trips.
right. And, but that other spare, is there a laundry list of issues with it, or it's just, it's age and mileage?
No, it's just age.
Age and mileage.
It had one driver and she took very good care of it. I mean,
So is this decision something we need to make tonight, or is it possible we could have them go through, okay, this is the immediate cost of repairs, and saying, okay, based upon the rest of the condition of the bus, tires, brakes, other issues, what would they see that we'd have to put in it next year? Because they could say, okay, you gotta have 6 tires here and 10,000 miles, and you're gonna need brakes, and your trainee's leaking, and the
yeah.
roof's
I know it doesn't need
5
tires because I had the tire person come. And that wasn't one of the buses that needed tires.
Right. But, I mean, I don't know, do we need to make this decision
You don't
tonight?
have to
We
make
don't
it
have to
tonight.
make the decision tonight. We're bringing it to you, letting you know it's there. That was another reason why we included the trust fund balances too, for you to look to see what's in the
I'd like
bus
to
trust
just,
fund.
it's up there now. I would just have them do, the board wants to know is if we keep this in the fleet another year, what do you
Where
see
are
the
we?
things that are gonna need to be done next year? And that may be, and they don't have a crystal ball, but they work on them all the time. They can say, okay, these are the issues we see with this bus. Could be front-end issues, it could be, who knows, AC system.
AC. I wish.
That's when you roll down the windows and you drive
That's the hole in the
faster.
floorboards.
But either way, I think that'll help us make a more informed decision. I'm not opposed to doing it because, once it gets out of warranty, there's vehicle repairs.
Yeah, the other thing that we were looking at, and again, it's not a tonight decision, but we had talked about, do we look at a van? And, do we look at a 15-passenger van? So that's another reason why I wanted to make sure you saw what was in the trust funds in general to kind of get a feel for, how much is there, what we may be able to do down the road if we need to. Is it easier for us to find a driver for a 15-passenger van than it is to find for a large van, potentially?
What did we see for census on our buses today, and is that going to be kind of the normal, or did we have people that said they were going to take the bus that drove in, or,
For the most part, it was right. There was a few kids that got on that
we weren't expecting?
we weren't expecting. I think we have like 26 kids on 4 buses.
Okay.
So it's I guess it's a little bit over 100. And I think we have 300 bus students or close to it.
So about-
We have a number of parents who have graciously
Stepped
stepped up to help, so
Okay.
we really, really appreciate that. And considering the number of people we had driving today, the traffic issues were almost non-existent.
Yeah, it was nice here in Valley View, I can attest to that.
So, yeah, if that's something you could get us, it'd be great if we had it the next
Yeah,
meeting, but,
yeah.
it's up to them to get it done. So realize we're relying on them to get that assessment done.
The other question I have is, at one time, we talked about a wage study for the bus drivers a couple weeks back. Has that had any progress? Is that going anywhere?
We've got a few more pieces, but as we shifted, we'll get back to it. And
Okay.
if I can't get it for the 14th, you'll have it for the 21st.
Okay.
Okay.
Opening a school
Anything else?
bumped up the list.
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. Next, technology.
So we've already, again, hit some of this. We did get Chromebooks in last Friday. We got 80 more of those in. One of the pieces that I do have in your packet, and this can also be part of the CARES Act, for the two-step authentication we found another solution that gives us more flexibility, but still gives us the two-step authentication for all of the pieces, including our more sensitive data. For us to cover all staff that might potentially bump into it at one point or another, remotely or on campus, plus the one-time setup fees, is around $8,600. The quote is in your folder. It is something that we can do through the CARES Act, and we could cut that back and look at just those who are remote currently, but we would then need to add to that if we go remote. I think it probably makes sense to build it now for all.
Is the one, and I haven't seen that quote, must have went in after I went in the folder, but is that broken down to the one-time fee?
The one-time fee is it ends up being $24 per staff member for the year, plus the fee. And there's a support piece in there that Jen is getting more information on whether or not we need to do that.
This was the only option that Jen found, or the option?
We looked at
Yeah.
several different options. This was the most viable. Others were $4, $6, $8 of a staff member, and the fees kept going up without the same flexibilities that this gives us to be able to add additional ways for that authentication to happen. So it can be a text, it can be an email, it can be, so there's other ways for people to be able to access that without only having, this is your only way to do it.
But do we need the flexibility?
Given that I still have some folks who are using flip phones, given that, yes, I do need that flexibility if we're remote.
Discussion?
And they are in the process of signing the data privacy agreement and will likely have that done within the week, which is
So
the
they felt
others
they
that
could
we
be
talked to.
compliant to our requirements as far as,
Yes, and the others that we spoke with were not too excited about the data privacy agreement.
because they were unfamiliar with it, or?
I don't think it was just unfamiliar. I think that they were looking at it in terms of it boxed them in more than they were willing to do. This company is looking at it in terms of, this opens up markets to us in Massachusetts and New Hampshire that work with this consortium, that this would give us an in, because we all go to the DPA list first.
So this would be paid out of the CARES funding?
Yes.
Discussion on this approach? Tim, I'll start with you.
I think we need it. I mean, the liability and a breach of student data is huge. In fact, Primex has a huge binder on top of their
Yes, we do.
regular liability because of those issues. And, yeah, I mean, if the money's there, I think we should move forward in a budgetary thing next year. My only question is, our fiscal year starts July 1, we're in October. We don't want to blow through this COVID money because we don't know what's coming down the pike. So can we, instead of doing a year contract, can we do a contract to July 1 and then have it renewable annually from July 1 forward?
We can certainly ask. A lot of companies will do that. The other
Yeah.
thing we would do would be, if it were this way, then it would just come renewable in probably for September or October 1 next year. So,
What I'm trying to do is save the expenditure in the COVID fund.
Right,
So that
understood.
if we need chemicals or something like that, the money's there.
okay, we can
Yeah,
certainly
may
ask.
reduce this. But we would need to first waive the purchasing policy requirement to go out for a bid and authorize them to do it because it's over 5,000. So I'll make a motion to waive the bid requirements based upon the research presented and the limited time available to get this up and running in place.
Second.
Any discussion on waiving the bid policy? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
So this was for 1 year. If they prorate it back, it's going to be less.
It would be less than that.
Ideally, it should be prorated back, and so maybe 5,000-ish.
I mean, if it's 5,000-ish, then it's within what we could do anyway, but I'm bringing it to you, because I also wanted to make sure that we had everyone covered that was possible rather than.
So this is going to be able to meet the requirements for the second authentication, two.
And it allows us to expand beyond just a two-step authentication as well, if we need to go there.
And we're going to be able to apply this in any situation or any software package that we need to, that they would be utilizing, because we have Google Classroom. We have-
For any of those that are data sensitive, yes.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to authorize staff to proceed with not to exceed $7,500. Hopefully it'll be less than that, with the company SHI for the proposed security protections.
Here's,
I'll second that.
here's my question. If we can only do it for the year, does that mean that it's a no?
What do you mean?
If we're not able to prorate it, but they would do a year's contract that would run, say, September 15 to September 15, is that a dead stop?
I'll amend my motion to go up to the 8650.
Who was the second?
Was the second?
You were.
Was there a second?
You were.
Was I? Yeah, okay, I'll go.
I mean, ideally, like Tim's makes a
I mean,
good point.
we can certainly
Try.
ask.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't a,
Right.
Yeah. I've got no problem with the amendment, with the understanding that I'd
We
like to
will
go
ask.
fiscal year to fiscal year. saves, you know, we may be scratching in a couple months for that COVID money if nothing else comes in.
And we
Understood.
may get to the end of this budget cycle and we may say we don't need it, or we found an approach that may be more cost effective, because everyone will be potentially utilizing this, and, you know, it's, everyone's scrambling, so much research has been put into it, which, you know, it was significant, but add 9 months to the equation, they're gonna come across other scenarios that may be
Well, then
better.
maybe others developed in the process.
Yeah,
as well.
developed to saying, hey, we could do it with this, and instead of just considering we're gonna budget this every year, we can do it based upon having experience utilizing it, and we can get 90% of the way for 0 to a lot less.
A lot less than zero?
No, a lot less than 86.
Than 86.50.
Pay us
Okay.
for they pay us for the advertisement and exposure.
So any other discussion on the motion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Too many unanimous votes tonight.
Well,
Don't worry.
You can always vote against
The
them.
wheel
Tim.
will falls off the bus anytime now. Any old business?
I don't know that this is fully old business. I'm bringing this to you for informational purposes, because I know as you look at the manifest, you're looking to see what exceeds 5,000. You had said you weren't necessarily looking at the pieces that were curricular. I do have a subscriptional renewal for our McGraw-Hill pieces for our reading program that goes K through 6. It's for the digital component that goes along with it. They have thrown in for us, it's a $9,800 contract. We are down to, cut off on the other side, $6,538.98. It is a renewal for what we've been using, but I wanted to make sure that the board was aware when you see this on there, that this is what that is.
Is that a Fund 10 item or is that a Title I item?
It's Fund 10.
What grades does it affect? Is that something?
It's K through 5.
So is that something that could be, you got a carryover last year from Title I, last year's budget to this? Is that something that could be funded out of that?
Because it's been in general fund, I cannot kick it back to Title I. That becomes supplant rather than supplement.
Okay.
Right now, it's funded actually under Misty's lines, under the educational software pieces there.
Okay. I don't have any issues with the I mean, I appreciate the communication, but you know, at this point in time, I'm not interested in.
Just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that it was,
No, that's
it
good.
was out there.
That's
Okay.
perfect.
That's what I had.
Moving on to new business. You have two policies which regarding JLIE and JLIE-R, which has got to do with student automobile use. You want to, I guess, bring the board up to speed on those?
I just got a comment. I read them, and the only comment I have is I've got no issues with the parking lot and the rules. The thing I'm having a hang up with is the sports, and the sports basically says that you got to be transported by a parent. If we have a 4:30 sports activity, most times the student's going to be at school, so that there's no transportation issue there. But once school's over, I think it ends at the end of that game.
It says that a student could transport themselves. A student cannot transport another student.
That's in the just school, but on the sports, the way I read it was you couldn't basically carpool, and that didn't make sense to me. Maybe I misinterpreted it.
The intent was that if a parent gives permission for another parent to drive their student,
Yeah.
that's fine. Primex, when I discussed this with them, and they're the ones that came back to me and said, you know, we wanted to close the loop. We'd had a general conversation that said, well, here's what's possible. And as they had talked with a larger pool of schools, looked at what was happening transportationally across the state and actually across the country with COVID, said, look, you know, you need to have a policy that covers all of your situations. You need to have a policy that spells out driving to school, driving to sports, driving to activities, so that it's the same. You've got it. Here's the instance. Here's what happens. And they said, we're going to tell you, kids driving kids, not a good idea. If it's a parent driving, so be it.
And I'm okay with the kids not driving kids. But I think if you know, if my child's playing football and another child doesn't have a ride, and the parent calls me up and says, hey, do you mind driving my daughter or son to the game?
This doesn't allow, this is for students doing the driving. This is not for parents driving other students.
Does it specify student in there, though? 'Cause I didn't-
This is student automobile use. It says, students allowed to drive to classes. Students may not transport other students who are not their own siblings. The student may not, as the driver.
Yep.
This does not address parents driving at all. This is students as drivers.
Even under the sports policy?
Nope, student athletes will be allowed to drive to sporting events with express written administrative position and parental approval as indicated on the form on the back. They may not transport other students who are not their own siblings. This is solely in regard to
Okay,
student
can we
drivers.
just- Can we insert a line in there somewhere, even if it's in the beginning of the intro, that this policy applies to students and not parents? The reason being is, I read it as a parent.
Student automobile use, but, okay, student drivers? Is that a better,
I just think plain English
Well,
saying,
I-
nothing would preclude a parent from,
But-
Right,
this
because his perspective is, my kid is a student, so this is a policy that applies.
right.
but
That's
the-
what you read, that's how
but the
he
student
read it.
isn't
Right.
driving the automobile. So
Right.
I guess,
But he wants to make his,
Yep.
I think
So-
his point is valid.
where would you like that stated? Because I guess this
I mean,
is
you're
specific
the-
to student
yeah,
drivers.
I mean, you've got a good command of the English language. It's just my interpretation of that as a parent was, it can't happen. So if that's my interpretation as a board member, what's a normal parent going to interpret? So I would just put that this applies to students and not necessarily parents who are transporting by agreement or something to that nature. Because I don't want to see a kid miss a basketball game or volleyball game because they don't think they have transportation.
Or a parent reading it and feeling that,
The same that I did.
So-
he can't transport other students.
Well, and I think that the most important piece is probably the title to make sure, because as someone is scanning through on the policy page, you want to make sure that the title clearly indicates what it's about as well. So does it make sense, you know?
I just think at the end, nothing would preclude parents coming to a mutual understanding to provide transportation to sporting events. This policy does not preclude parents from transporting.
Well, this policy only applies to students driving, and not parents or
Yeah.
other family members. Because it could be grandparents, could be, I mean, somebody could read it. and-
So if I just, the last sentence, or the first sentence, this policy only applies to student drivers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would have given me a totally different interpretation
Okay.
of policy.
I will put that front and center.
Any,
So first
We-
line,
we okay with approving it with that amendment?
Make a motion to approve it as a first read, or do we need a second? Do we need to waive the first reading and do a second because of sports? Kind of defer to Joel on that with the schedule.
with the schedule,
Your athletic events where you would travel don't start until September 18th.
right, which would mean that we'd have to have it in place by next
10 days.
Monday at the latest.
Okay.
And I want to have time to at least get this out to parents.
So make a motion to waive the first reading and approve it as a final read.
I'm okay with that. Do we need to make that motion, or we can just approve it as a final read?
You can
with
approve it
amendment?
as a final read, so it's,
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. I'll amend my motion to approve it as a final read.
With the amendments?
Yeah.
I'll second. Any discussion? Not hearing any discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm a no.
Joe's a no.
See, there you go, you
Get them
got your-
both?
There's-
Do we
it
get
was
Stan?
coming.
Was that, Stan is yes or no?
That would be it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Next on the new business, we have a designation of Little Red Schoolhouse and a list of historical places. We received from the state.
I can,
Oh.
before you do that, just
Go
to
ahead.
give you hot off the press, our two-factor login just updated their quote. We have a 4,800 total quote now. They've given us implementation support at zero charge. So
Okay.
they're charging us only for the staff members.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
So we received notification from the state, and they sent us some information with this nice plaque that I'm sure we can frame that says, Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, State of New Hampshire certifies that the Street School in Farmington, New Hampshire has been listed on the New Hampshire State Register of Historical Places. Historic places. With a letter to the chair, Joel.
That's when they got started in motion.
Get started. So some additional information. I'll get back to Ruth Ellen. Is there anything we need to reply back with? No. I can pass this along to the board members here.
Sure. I can,
assume we're gonna
I can
be able
scan,
to-
I can scan the documents and put them in the folder if those of you who are remote would like to see them.
And this,
That would be awesome.
we can
Okay.
frame this, but I don't know if we've got a position for this in the building that we feel would be safe. Maybe
I
we
could
do.
put it in the SAU office framed.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend hanging it in the Little Red Schoolhouse.
And another one here from same, also a resolution from the Senator James Gray. So, two different things to add to our historical documents. Anything else on the new business? Go ahead.
One of the meetings we had, I made a comment about our technology and needing our technology as state-of-the-art for the worlds that our kids are going into. I'd like to ask the board to take my first draw of my stipend, which is coming out in the next 2 weeks, and apply that to the technology fund as a line item transfer for the purposes of Mr. Shagnan's class being able to purchase a decent drone for the kids. Because one of the things that we're seeing out in the career world is, HVAC is inspecting with drones. Fire services, police services are using drones. And I know we've used some lower-end stuff in the past, but I think our kids need to see what's out in the real world. And I think we could fund the program with that money. And if not, we'll talk, second round coming around of what's needed for the program. But I'd like to see that money used to seed that program, and just give him direction of what he thinks he needs and what we can bring forward for the kids.
Now, I'm sure you hopefully had a chance to look into this, because this has come up several times. It came up from when I was a selectman. At times we said, no, you can't do this, and are we able to do it?
The RSA says we can, this is within Fund 10. The RSA allows us line item transfer authority. So,
But what I don't know is if it allows me not to pay you for services rendered. So that's what I need to double check with.
but we're a
the-
stipend, we're not a salary.
Right.
So there's nothing under the labor law that precludes me from waiving a stipend. If I were to put in for a reimbursable expense, there's time limits on, I think it's 30 days that those have to be paid for.
So you just
But-
don't put in your slip for your stipend?
Yeah, I don't have any, school board expenses, and I just, looking at what we have, I like his program. It's a very good program. I think it can get better, and I think that's the way to do it. If I pull the check in, I'm going to pay $250 to $300 in taxes on the check that's not going to the kids. And that's my big reason I'm going with a line item transfer.
So what that then ends up being is a donation to the district. I mean, it's not leaving Fund 10, but it is a donation to a particular program, which is more than the $500 that is my authority to accept on behalf of the district. So that would need to be accepted by the board
Which I think they
to
would do.
go to a particular
Which I
program.
do. If they vote no on the motion, then it's obviously not accepted. If they vote yes, then, you know, and I can
Well,
amend
no,
it.
because it's one to say they're recognizing that you're doing this, and then it needs to be accepted for that.
My motion would be a dual motion then,
Okay.
to allow the transfer and accept it as a donation.
That's your motion? That's your motion?
That's my motion.
I'll second. And I'll make a friendly amendment that, I mean, I think we need to have it out if it's not, for some reason, allowed.
Absolutely.
And
And so-
I'm fine with that, and if the funds are expended and we get audited, then, you know, I'll pay that.
Well, I will
Pay that
check,
out of my pocket.
I will check with the auditors before we expend the
Yeah.
funds. So we'll
But I
make
don't-
sure that we're good there.
But I don't want to, I mean, we're in September, I don't want to wait 6 months to get an auditing rule. I'll also go on the record that if the auditors say, hey, we can't do that, and we expended the fund, I'll pay the bill
Okay.
back into the district. I just think, I'd like to see something like that with the technology into our buildings, and I think it's an easy way of doing it, or starting it.
Thank you.
And that was for,
A drone program.
right, but for the amount was you,
My first release on the stipend, which I want to say
I believe it's
I want to say
the
1,200.
gross is 1,200, and then
Yeah. So whatever that first release is, how about not less than $1,200?
not to exceed $1,200.
I don't,
I don't like the not to exceed.
I was sitting here earlier looking at the, at the
Yeah. I believe
report
it-
and
I think
trying
it's
to
20
divide it out,
I
and
think it's 2,500 each with
I
the
think if you
additional
just kept
1,000
it
for
plain
the
as
fair.
that first
Because it's
installment, whatever it is.
13,500 that's
I
budgeted.
don't think it's that much, is it really?
I think
It
it
is
is.
13.5, but
It's 13, I believe it was 25 for four.
I think it's 25 and 27.
It was 25 for
But depending on
four.
how it ends up being prorated, I don't know how they're doing it. They're doing it based upon time
oh,
days?
2,500 for the year.
The year.
Okay.
2,500 for
Equally
the year.
distributed or
yeah.
based upon time?
I'm
It's,
thinking,
it's a 6-month split, so it's paid twice.
I mean, if we made the motion, like Charlie said, or I do a friendly motion, the motion to say the first stipend release, does that cover the amount?
It does.
So
It
that's,
does.
that's,
And
that's what
you-
we
and just-
you'd know that number by Monday anyway.
Yeah.
And
I-
when, those checks don't get cut till what, middle of the month or something?
yeah,
it's coming out.
Oh, that is the middle of the month,
Yeah.
really?
Yes, it is, yeah. Middle of the month is Monday. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're buying
Tuesday.
Chinese.
I tried to, this is a little different because a few years ago, I tried to do that with a donation to the boosters with mine. But the boosters doesn't fall under our budget line, so it
Right.
wasn't a transfer, so I had to take the money and then donate it.
Right.
But that was different.
But this
But I
is
think a
within the
transfer
same-
is probably more doable.
I mean,
So,
I studied it pretty hard.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
an attorney.
I will,
Play one on TV?
we've got a call in to Mike Campo for this week anyway on some other things. I'll add it to the list and I'll try to get a hold of him tomorrow.
Played one in police service for 15 years.
Any other discussion on the motion? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous. Anything else for
Thank you,
public?
Tim.
I mean, anything else for public or new business?
Do we have manifest tonight, or is that just?
You had a last meeting. No, okay, sorry, you'll have it next meeting. Or you did have it last meeting as
I
well.
just,
It's those odd midweek meetings that just
You're
throw
throwing
us
me
all
off.
off.
This weekly thing is throwing me off.
You'll get used to it.
wait till we go,
Not what we wanted to hear, Charlie, thank you.
wait till we go bi-weekly, meaning 2 times in a week.
Budget season.
As long as it goes shorter.
Just, before we go into non-public, I just want to put it out, at the polls, the selectmen were there. They made the comment that as we slow down and get into opening, they're probably going to ask for a joint meeting prior to budget, just to communicate so that everybody's kind of knows which side of the fence and what's going on, et cetera.
Okay.
I think that'll be good. My other request is, I can't think of her first name, it's that school resource officer, is it Webster?
Antoinette Webster.
Antoinette, okay. Can we, and again, after we get by the opening, I'm not sure how much of our public knows her. and I don't think we've ever really, like, formally introduced her to the public. Can we invite her into a meeting?
She's been, she hasn't been to a board meeting. She's been to number of parent meetings
Yeah.
and has been, but we can certainly invite her.
Yeah.
Part of the issue is because the
Jane-
PD is down officers right now. She's been pulling extra duty, and I hate to have her stay longer if she doesn't need to on a night off, but certainly ask her.
Well, you know, what'd be awesome is if she's filling overtime on the town budget size, have her come in while she's on duty, and we'll introduce her at the beginning and get her out.
There we go. I will put that bug in the chief's ear and see what he says.
Okay. Tell him we said please.
I always use please for the police.
So tell him we said please.
I will.
I know you're
I
polite,
will.
but we're always this polite.
Just tell them that.
And she's been phenomenal. And she was here most of the day yesterday as well.
Yeah, I saw her. I actually had a long conversation with her. Just let Jay know that, the budget committee member and the assistant budget committee member said, please.
We don't want to scare him.
Moving right along. I'd like to thank everyone for watching and attending, and I'm going to make a motion to go into non-public, the RSA 91A:3, 2 ABC, and a personnel.
Can I
Second.
add one more thing very quickly? Thank you so much for passing a teacher's contract.
Oh, yes. Yeah, everyone who should already know, the teacher's contract passed last night, 6:08 by 4:36.
Yep.
And how many blanks?
25.
Yeah, good.
Good for you.
So,
Second.
all those in, second, all those in
just got it
favor?
now. Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Have a good night.
Aye.